Saving Private Ryan was released in 1998. It's directed by Steven Spielberg and it's written by Robert Rodat, and we have an amazing cast, including, to name just a few, we have Tom Hanks, Edward Burns, Vin Diesel, Adam Goldberg, Giovanni Ribisi, Matt Damon, Ted Danson. It's because of Ted Danson that I decided to watch this. I had seen this before, I think at school, if I remember correctly. It was a very long time ago. And I decided, because of Danson, to give it another watch. And on the one hand, I can see why it gets a lot of love and praise. But at the same time, I feel like the story needed a better structure. It needed a little bit more work. It's a very flashy film, visually impressive, great performances. I'll expand on this in a moment. But I don't think it's a perfect story. It's very slow. I think it needs to be tidied up a little bit. It felt like we had this is purely speculation, but it felt like we had the original script and they were so precious about it, they didn't want to take anything out of it, so this is the final product. But I feel like there is definitely a lot in this that doesn't really add any value to the story. It doesn't really change the emotions if we were to remove it. Some of the dialogue is brilliant, some of it is just kind of boring. So I think it needed a bit of work, but I can see why it gets a lot of love. The film is about various soldiers during the Second World War and their efforts to try and save, well, Private Ryan, who is one of 4 Ryan brothers who is surviving, and their mission to reach him. And that's basically the whole narrative for almost 3 hours. There are, of course, little pockets of narratives here and there, but in general, there's not enough of a plot to keep things moving for that length of time. I think we could have easily taken out an hour and a half. We wouldn't have lost anything with the characters. We wouldn't have lost anything with the main part of the narrative. It wouldn't have changed the emotions at all. And honestly, there's not a lot of variety in what's happening, which on the one hand is very realistic, very believable. The soldiers are in a lot of very dangerous situations, and obviously, on the one hand, yes, let's praise how realistic it feels. I don't know if it's 100% accurate, but it feels very real and definitely worthy of praise. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's an interesting story for the entire duration. In fact, I'd say it definitely isn't. We're looking at the exact same things for a lot of the film, and it's just explosion and noise. And then we do have some quieter scenes. And those are the moments where we get to know some of the characters a bit more. And that definitely helped to keep things a little interesting when the narrative was being quite slow. And the characters are well written, the performances are very good, and I definitely think we got a lot of emotions out of them. And again, that's something that I think is very worthy of praise with the film. So it did a lot of things right. I just feel like it could have been half the length and we would have lost nothing. And the more slow, boring moments where it felt kind of repetitive and we weren't really getting anything new out of it, we could have taken those out and it would have been potentially a perfect film. So I feel like it does feel like a passion project and they were too precious to take anything out of it. And I get it. Speaking as a writer, there are times when I write something and I think, yes, I really like this paragraph or I really love this chapter, but I realise it adds no value to the story, the character development, the emotions of the reader. It has to go. And unfortunately, there were just too many moments like that in this. Not any specific chunk of time. There was no time when I was thinking, well, for this entire half an hour, nothing happened. It's just small things here and there. Scenes could be a little bit shorter. Dialogue doesn't really add anything in certain points. So I feel like it needs a lot of work to be a really great film. Visually, well, it's very repetitive. There's not a lot to look at for a huge chunk of it. But the special effects and things are very effective. The performances are great. The characters are well written. The dialogue, a lot of it is quite well written. It feels very realistic and believable, but that doesn't necessarily mean entertaining. Yes, it feels realistic for the bulk of the film, but I wouldn't say the bulk of the film is entertaining. But the good bits are very, very good. So on the one hand, I can understand why a lot of people really value the film, but at the same time, I think it needs quite a bit of work to be an excellent film because it's very slow and a lot of it doesn't really move things forward. And I think the narrative needed a little bit of a better structure and a little bit more substance in certain places so that we didn't have any periods or many periods when there was just not a lot going on and it didn't have a lot to offer. Again, as I said, there are times when maybe the narrative isn't going very far, but the character development is, or we get to connect with the characters more. But there are those times when there's just not a lot going on, and we absolutely could have removed quite a bit of this without losing any value whatsoever. So Saving Private Ryan definitely feels like a passion project, and usually passion projects need a bit of work, even with the final release, to be fully entertaining for the viewer. That being said, I can see a lot of value in the film. The performances are great. Some aspects of the story are interesting. The special effects are very effective. So in general, yes, it's a good film. No, it's not a perfect film. Do I recommend it? Sure, why not? I feel like it's got a lot of value and there are some really great moments. But from start to finish, Saving Private Ryan is not a perfect film. I say this, it has 8.6 out of 10 on IMDb across 1.6 million reviews and ratings, which is absolutely phenomenal. So clearly, a lot of people really love this film, but I can't deny the fact that I can see room for improvement. It's worth watching, but it's definitely not a perfect film.